Hi, welcome back to Follet, the video book. Today's snippet is the second one in chapter 14. And besides being appropriate for all ages, it's a blatant, undisguised nod to all folks who enjoy the TV show Outlander. You'll see. If you're ready, here we go. As he approached the little house, Follet looked around. It was the only house on the little road. No one was in sight. The front porch of the house was flanked by gigantic lilac bushes, full of heavy purple clusters of blooms, redolent with their sweet aroma and the memories infused in their fragrance. Follet walked up the steps onto the porch. It ran the width of the house, about 40 feet, and was deep enough to let anyone sitting on the swing hanging from the sky-blue painted beadboard ceiling to swing to their heart's content. Follet opened the door and walked into an open area that was divided into living room to the right and dining room to the left, simply by the placement of some comfortable furniture. Straight ahead was a staircase leading to the second floor. Follet turned to the living room. In front of a big brick fireplace was a massive couch, and in the middle of the couch, sticking out of a pile of dogs, were the arms and legs and red head of a woman. She was asleep. Follet walked around to the front of the couch to sort out what was sleeping there. A gigantic dog opened its eyes, raised its head, and stared at Follet. "Hey, pup," Follet thought. The dog held Follet's gaze for a split second, just to let Follet know that the dog was doing its job, and then sank comfortably back into rest. As far as Follet could tell, there were 5 dogs on the sofa, 3 skinny hounds and 2 massive molossers and 1 human. And a beautiful human it was. While the dogs' coats ranged from fawn to red to blue-gray to brindle to spotted, the woman's hair was a stunning copper penny red, cut for convenience to just below her jawline. She wore an oversized red t-shirt with the logo Big Ed's, it's a Pittsburgh thing, emblazoned across the front in the lettering one would expect to see on a high school letterman's jacket. She was barefoot and her legs were long and well-muscled, a runner's legs. As Follet's eyes journeyed from her calves to knees to thighs and further, he saw white cotton panties printed with a riot of tiny racing dogs in all colors of the rainbow, peeking out from where her t-shirt had ridden up in her sleep. Her t-shirt, oversized and loose-fitting, was pulled up and revealed a glimpse of a hard belly. This was a dream, and a dreamer that Follet would enjoy. Follet looked around the room. In one corner, 5 big dog crates were lined up, gates open. In another was a desk with a beat-up leather office chair and a large canvas bag in front, covered with books and papers. A brass table lamp provided light there. Then the couch with a low wooden coffee table between it and the hearth. The table was strewn with magazines, mostly concerned with shooting sports and dog rescue, and a television remote peeked out from beneath a paperback romance novel. Follet noted that the addresses on the label on one of the magazines was Sassy Clune. On the mantel of the fireplace sat a smallish flat-screen TV. A tall steel gun safe occupied the last corner of the room, flat against the front wall of the house, so anyone looking in the windows would never know it was there, but ready to be used. The floors were wood, well used and well scratched by big paws. And then the floors were covered in mist, and the walls of the room melted away. Follet stood on a rocky hill overlooking a small wooded valley. He looked down and saw a group of 8 or 10 men in bright red military coats running from left to right along a path. One of the men looked up and saw Follet, stopped, raised a rifle, and fired. A rocky face just to Follet's left exploded into dust. "Jamie, shoot the red-coated bastards! Get your head down and arse up!" Follet turned to the woman's voice. Sassy clambered up a pile of rocks carrying 2 flintlocks with a powder horn on a leather thong round her shoulder and a leather bag at her waist. She caught Follet's eye and tossed him one of the rifles. Follet pulled back the cock, lined up the body of the soldier who had fired at him in his sights, and pulled the trigger. The flint hit the frizzen, a spark ignited the primer in the pan, and the main charge ignited, sending a shower of sparks out of the barrel and out to the side from the flash hole. A branch just above the soldier's head blew apart as the lead ball missed its mark. Follet swore, but he heard Sassy laugh. "Well, me darlin', failing means you're playing, but if you keep shooting like that, a clean shirt'll do you." Sassy licked her thumb and wiped it on the front sight of the rifle, sighted, and fired. The soldier dropped like a stone. Follet stood stock still. The redcoats on the path turned to find the source of the shot that had killed their compatriot. One shouted and pointed in Follett's direction, and 4 of the soldiers aimed their rifles at Follet. Sassy ran past Follet, grabbing his hand to pull him away. "You're always at the coos tail, Jamie. Run! We'll find a wee place to rest sooner now." Follet followed Sassy and ran over the ridge and down into a glen. Sassy's hair was long enough to reach the middle of her back in her dream, unbound and wavy, but still copper-penny red. Her pale skin reddened in her cheeks and her neck as she ran. She wore a blue petticoat that matched her eyes, a gunmetal gray corset, white pockets tied at her waist, and a white neckerchief folded into a triangle tucked down the back of her stays. As she ran and her petticoats lifted, Follet saw that her gray stockings were tied with blue ribbons at her knees to match her petticoat. They ran and ran, down hills and through a small valley. They jumped over a small stream, and Sassy turned quickly to the right down a new, seldom-used trail. She pushed low-hanging branches out of her way, and Follet had to duck to avoid them smacking him in the face as he ran behind her. The path meandered left and then right and then left again, and there, right in front of them, was a small, cruck-framed house, its rafters set in the ground and walls a mix of rough stone filled with turf. A framed door stood in the center of the longest wall, flanked by 2 windows. A stone chimney made up one end wall. Sassy pushed open the door, carefully laid her rifle against the wall, and flopped down in one of the 2 chairs that sat before a small table. Besides a rope bed upon which lay a lumpy straw mattress, these were the only pieces of furniture in the house. "I'm fair puckled," Sassy said. Follet lay his rifle next to Sassy's and walked to the hearth. On hooks to the left of the hearth hung maybe a dozen pairs of beeswax tapers. Follet grabbed a pair and pulled his black knife out of the top of his woolen socks and cut them apart. He looked to the mantel and found a pair of candlesticks. He pushed the tapers into the candlesticks and took them to the table where Sassy sat. She reached into her pockets, pulled out a flint and steel, and with well-practiced skill set the wicks aflame. Follet turned back to the hearth. There were logs for a fire set with small splintered sticks poking out of the kindling above the fuel logs. Follet took one out of the kindling and smelled it. The piney, resinous aroma was just what he'd hoped for, fatwood. Follet reached into his sporran and pulled out his flint and steel and struck sparks until the fatwood caught. The flue worked as it should, drawing the smoke up the chimney. Follet walked to the table and sat in the other chair next to Sassy. He now realized that he wore leather shoes, woolen knit hose with his black knife at the top, a kilt, with naught else beneath, a white Jacobite shirt with an open lace-up collar. The tartan of his kilt was wide double bands of sky blue crossed with thin red lines over hunter green squares. As if reading his mind, Sassy said, "Fraser hunting. Aye, what else for a Fraser hunting them British bastards, eh, Jamie boy? Now come over here and kiss me." Follet smiled at Sassy's boldness. He walked over to her and stood beside her. He leaned down to her and she raised her head to him. Their lips met, just a touch, and Sassy's lips parted and then closed again on Follet's lower lip. This kiss broke, and Sassy raised her arms to caress Follet's shoulders. Follet moved his right hand to lay against Sassy's cheek. Sassy ended this kiss, and Follet straightened up. Sassy gazed longingly into Follet's eyes and then lowered her gaze to his shoulders and then lower still to his kilt. Where she sat with Follet standing beside her, the top of her head came to his waist. Her eyes were level with his kilt pin, and her mouth... She reached to his kilt and slid the sharp pin from the fabric. She laid the pin on the table. Sassy reached under Follet's kilt with her left hand and whispered, "Where do you keep your caber, laddie?"